I see Rachel Maddow's finally like playing a clip of Curtis Yarvin, and the corporate media is finally like catching up to this story. I've been reading from the End of Reality to try to make people understand who they just actually elected, who was running for president, for over a year now. More than a year, but it's just one of those things where that clip is telling you, we've misunderstood. When they say they want to run the country like a business, they aren't talking about making money. They're talking about having a dictator. He articulates that point I've been pointing out for a while, largely inspired by understanding Curtis Yarvin and his role in inspiring the current crop of billionaires and kind of conservative thought leaders, if you can even call them that, more like just bootlickers and fucking like monarchy stands. But this should be terrifying to everybody because this is exactly what it is. I mean, let me just read this again. This will be like the 5th time I've read this. So this is from a book called The End of Reality, How 4 Billionaires Are Selling a Fantasy Future of the Metaverse, Mars, and Crypto by Jonathan Taplin. And I'm going to read a little section about Peter Thiel, Curtis Yarvin, and kind of what they're about. Right. And so I've read this before. It's actually gone viral before, both on this app and on Twitter, which I never really like going viral talking about Elon Musk on Twitter or Peter Thiel. And so we'll just begin it right here. The disruptive power of social media was why Thiel so valued his position as Facebook's senior director. So Peter Thiel was Facebook's senior director for a long time. The idea of Facebook being like a liberal thing and Mark Zuckerberg being a liberal has always been bullshit. Steve Bannon, who worked with Thiel on the Trump transition team in 2016, said, quote, "Peter's idea of disrupting government is out there. People thought Trump was a disruptor. They had no earthly idea what was being pitched by Thiel," end quote. For instance, both candidates he identified to run the Food and Drug Administration, his Silicon Valley associates Jim O'Neill and Balaji Srinivasan, argued that the agency should dump its requirement that drugs be proven effective before reaching the market. Bannon and Thiel instrumentalized Facebook for Trump's regime by using a new form of propaganda. Bannon said, quote, "The Democrats don't matter. The real opposition is the media, and the way to deal with them is to flood the zone with shit," end quote. The idea was not to convince people of a specific policy, but to overwhelm them with disinformation to such an extent that they became disoriented and reality lost all meaning. Sound familiar? For many citizens, it was not a matter of denying the truth, but rather a deep weariness that the truth was even knowable. And of course, the new AI-driven ChatGPT will make it even easier to flood the zone. The New York Times' Ezra Klein notes, quote, "And what unnerved me a bit about ChatGPT was the sense that we are going to drive the cost of bullshit to zero when we have not driven the cost of truthful or accurate or knowledge-advancing information lower at all." Yeah. Of course, Bannon didn't invent this strategy. Dictators, starting with the mustache man and Mussolini, have refined it over the years. But Thiel realized with Bannon's help that it was no longer sufficient to proclaim, quote, "liberty" as your movement's North Star. You needed coercive state power to achieve your goals on immigration, banning abortion and porn, and stopping the woke revolution around Black and LGBTQ social justice reform. But as British historian Jeff Ely points out, the fascism of 2022, quote, "no longer relies as much on street fighting, pitched confrontations, imposing displays of paramilitary strength, and the spectacle of uniformed masses or massed force. It operates rather by verbal onslaughts, internet trolling, instantly produced and transmitted visual incitements, and all the other virtual means of displaced but no less brutal assault," end quote. This is Bannon and Thiel's specialty, aided, of course, by Zuckerberg's Facebook and Musk's Twitter. John Gans, an American writer for The New Statesman, says Thiel is, quote, "probably the most clearly fascist prominent figure in the USA today, including Trump," end quote. Thiel has always had an apocalyptic vision, one that assumed getting people to come over to his view of the future would take a backlash against globalization and a financial catastrophe. So I wonder why they'd want to destroy our financial lives. I wonder why they would want a financial catastrophe. As the global economy began to melt down in 2008, he wrote, quote, "the entire human order can unravel in a relentless escalation of violence, famine, disease, war, and death," end quote. For the next 8 years, Thiel railed against the Obama administration. By 2015, he grasped that Trump could be the vehicle to bring on the end times he so desired. And he realized that Facebook could be an ideal megaphone for Trump's, quote, American carnage vision. Curtis Yarvin, one of Peter Thiel's favorite bloggers, wrote that some people are more suited to slavery than others. Yarvin leads the neo-reactionary movement whose adherents believe that American democracy is a failed experiment and should be replaced by monarchy, with the ruler similar to the CEO of a corporation. Though Thiel might not be willing to go that far publicly, Yarvin believed he had convinced Thiel that libertarianism was a doomed project without the inclusion of authoritarianism. He argued, quote, we should get over our dictator phobia. After Thiel said that Republican members of Congress who voted for Trump's impeachment after the January 6 attacks were, quote, traitorous, Yarvin noted of Thiel. He's fully enlightened, just plays it very carefully. Looking forward to the 2024 election, Yarvin believes the Republican candidate, Trump or a Trump clone, should campaign on a specific mandate. Quote, if I'm elected, I'm going to assume absolute power in Washington and rebuild the government. Once that's done, Yarvin believes elite institutions like Harvard and the New York Times need to be closed down, and then we nationalize all local police and National Guard troops. Yarvin's law and order prescriptions are simple, and when I read this, I want you to think about like all the data that Musk is getting. Okay, so think about the data that Musk is getting access to. A trivial database query can identify the set of humans in the country who are either A, productively employed, B, independently wealthy, or C, a well-supervised dependent of A or B. Everyone else, including all minors, gets the tag. This inconspicuous device fits on your ankle and continuously reports your position to the authorities. If no crimes are committed near your location, you have nothing to worry about. Saddled with a large number of residents who are effectively dependents on the state, for example, those who receive housing subsidies, these people need to be reprocessed to determine whether they can become members of productive society, and during this time there is no reason to leave them where they are. Therefore, we can expect to establish secure relocation centers in which the 20th century's artificially decivilized subpopulations will receive social services in a controlled environment while they are reintroduced to civil society. To me, this is fascism, full stop. And so when you begin to understand who the philosophical drivers are of the people currently in control of our government, it begins to make a little sense what we're watching. All of this is designed to completely destroy the government, reinstitute a monarchy with Donald Trump as the CEO. When they've been saying they want to run the country like a business, we've been going, but the country's not a business, it doesn't make money. What they've been talking about is dictatorship. Yarvin says it in that clip that's circulating with Rachel Maddow. CEO is a dictator, exactly. He agrees with Noam Chomsky, who said the corporate structure is the most authoritarian structure ever created. And so we're in deep, deep trouble, my friends, and this is largely because people didn't know what they were voting on all sides, apparently, of the election. I think even the people who claimed Republicans didn't know what they were voting for didn't really know what Republicans are voting for, and now it's becoming very clear. We are in massive amounts of trouble. The Democrats, as Steve Bannon said, like the Democrats don't matter. The real opposition is the media. They've destroyed the media. They've destroyed like people's ability to trust any information to the point where we're watching this coup happen, and instead of stopping it, we're arguing over whether it's happening again, which shouldn't be surprising because we just spent 4 years arguing over whether the insurrection we watched on television was an insurrection. But this goes much deeper and much darker than people really seem to understand. The nexus of these types of people with no empathy, personality disorders, endless greed, and the type of access to all of the data of the 2 decades we've just lived through of surveillance capitalism, where they have all of our data. Now they have all of our government data. Data is power, and everybody should be absolutely terrified that this isn't being stopped.
You tell me if that explains what we are living through right now, today, in the news, because here is Curtis Yarvin.
Why has no one ever suggested, let's just get rid of this thing? You have a government in Washington. You're either for it or against it. But what is government? A government is just a corporation which owns the country. Nothing more, nothing less. It so happens that our sovereign corporation is very poorly managed. And there's a very simple way to replace that, which is what we do to all corporations that have failed. We simply delete them. We haven't been able to do that with our government for 200 years. So it's gotten a little bit stale. The other thing about getting rid of your government is you can't just say, well, the limits of the government are the limits of the formal government. You have to say, well, what is the system actually? And it includes a lot of things that are called NGOs, things that are called universities, things that are funded by the state. It's a very, very large system, and it all needs to be destroyed.
NGOs, universities, things that are funded by the state. It's a large system, and it all needs to be destroyed. Because we need to, in his words, delete the government, delete the whole system, including nonprofits, including universities, including everything the government funds. We need to destroy all of it. And why would you do that? What would you want to replace it with?
You need a CEO, and a national CEO is what's called a dictator. It's the same thing. There's no difference between a CEO and a dictator. If Americans want to change their government, they're going to have to get over the dictator phobia.
Americans are going to have to get over their dictator phobia. We need to...
I wouldn't waste my time reading an Ayn Rand novel if you paid me, but the gist is very simple. Rich people are virtuous, rich people are superheroes, and if the world's going to be saved, it's going to be because of rich people. I mean, have you noticed how, like, Trumpers have basically turned Elon Musk into Batman? So now he's auditing people. Now he's a law enforcement agent. Like, he's literally a fucking, like, South African racist elite immigrant who purchased the government. He's none of those things. He's going after government agencies that were looking at his government contractors. To have a government contractor engaged with the it's also fucking corrupt. Like the fact that they say it's like rooting out corruption is so Orwellian. It's fucking insane to be having to deal with this level gaslighting. But like, no, I've never read Ayn Rand. Somebody gave me, I don't know if they gave me the Fountainhead or Atlas Shrugged. It's somewhere around here, but like, I wouldn't read that worthless drivel. Right. I know what she's up to, and I just fundamentally disagree that rich people are the only ones who can save culture, and that a culture is smart by not taxing rich people and allowing them to kind of use their money as they see fit. Then you get people like Elon. It's just insanity. It defies logic. It defies human behavior. It's basically just bootlicking rich people. That's all it is. It's positioning rich people as like the saviors of society, and that like the value. It's just nonsensical bullshit that the real world doesn't bear out. So no thanks. I couldn't stomach reading that bullshit. Well, I think this current moment is about the nature of reality, actually, and how the human mind kind of constructs reality, because we seem to think that there's this kind of objective reality that exists outside of human perception. But how would we know? Because any descriptions of a shared reality come from human perception. So perception literally is reality. And so the human mind interprets reality and what they're experiencing through the information dictated to them through language delivered through cultural conditioning. And so culture, like, is an attempt to create a normalized reality. But in the United States, our culture has been fractured to the point that we're living in different realities. Politically, functionally, whatever, and then comes along this kind of reality destabilizing technology, right? I talk a lot about how we're shifting epochs, and part of that epochal shift is from a shared reality rooted in the dissemination of information from television and magazines and old media into the Wild West free-flowing information of the internet. That's essentially fractured reality. That the television-based reality was dictatorial. It cost a lot of money to own television networks. Therefore, the information that was coming to us from those television networks was easily controllable, and also was one stream of information, right? You had a dictatorial messaging system where there's one guy telling us what reality is. Then with the repeal of the Fairness Doctrine, it fractures. And so instead of sharing this like one part of reality and then arguing on both sides, it just created these kind of echo chambers and information silos. And so reality fractured. And now you move into the internet age where anybody can get on their phone and reach millions of people in ways that it used to take owning a television network to work. to do. And now you can kind of see, like, you can see the way reality's fractured. You can see why the kind of like social power structures are striking back and seeking to censor the internet, because our information has always been heavily controlled. And we just lived through a 20-year period where the internet kind of like destabilized everything, let the cat out of the bag, like information was flowing around too much. And now all the spooks and three-letter agencies and global powers that be are kind of tightening it up to try to normalize reality again. It's just that we're being pulled into a reality that is being like shaped by narcissists and sociopaths, people without empathy, the worst among us, right? And it's not just Trump. I mean, it really, I think when we reduce this to a problem of Trumpism, we fail to see the scope of the way that kind of capitalism and greed and Christianity and all of these kind of, what I would call narcissistic social systems have conditioned everybody to be kind of authoritarians and people obsessed with their own like consumption, right? Their own needs. Like basically like cultural narcissism is the monoculture, is the cult of the individual. And so it was a fight for reality. I mean, I'm not saying that Kamala Harris like offered us a great future. I'm not saying she's anything other than a corrupt politician, but I am saying she's not a Curtis Yarvin inspired like monarchist who wants to turn us all into techno serfs, or worse. I mean, and this is just their words. This is just the philosophical like belief structure that somebody like JD Vance, Peter Thiel, and Elon Musk have. I mean, I remember when like Obama was like in trouble for going to some like church sermon by Jeffrey Wright or his association with Bill Ayers, and all of those were problems. But somehow the fact that like Curtis Yarvin and his kind of dystopian philosophies, his fascist kind of monarchist dictatorial philosophies are somehow irrelevant in the conversation about who's leading the country now and shaping our reality. That I'm telling you, the prediction is that to me, like having Donald Trump and this type of administration in power as AI and deepfakes and all of this stuff really gets going is going to be something that we as a global species never really recover from. And that the ramifications for future generations are profound, and that it's absolutely terrifying how much of our global society or American society will be shaped by Donald Trump and Elon Musk's narcissism. It's fucking terrifying. And again, like Kamala Harris simply wasn't this, and there's no other way of looking at it. Like I'm not even advocating for her so much. And as I was saying all along during the election, we're actually voting against Trumpism. That's what we're doing, and we'll worry about the other stuff later because if Trump gets elected, it's curtains. But this country, hi, I'm the problem. It's us. We're the problem. The minds that have been shaped by this culture, the reality that we all live in, and our inability to see outside of it is exactly the problem.